Hello, and welcome everybody to another event of the Altering, Shifting, Communing Conversation series presented by Call for Curators. I am Ilaria Conti, the curator of the series, and I'm here today with Esther Lu. Hi, Esther. Thank you so much for being with us. As many of you know, the talk series is born in an effort to create a space to reconsider curatorship in communal terms and have the chance to discuss together ideas, tools, strategies, and reflect not only on what we do, but as I always repeat, on how we do it, how we develop our work through critical thinking, and also how we can amplify the work of others. So today's talk will be the last talk before our August recess. The series will then resume in September with new guests and a refreshed format. So stay tuned on all of this. And I encourage everybody, as always, to subscribe to the series newsletter. Everybody can do it here. We will have, as usual, a 40-minute conversation. And in the meantime, feel free to ask any questions for Esther through the comment section. And for those who want to connect with us or with her after the talk, also feel free to reach out to our email. So I'll gather questions throughout the talk and then field them toward the end of the conversation. Now let's get started. Again, Esther, thank you so very much for being with us today. I am very glad that we have the chance to wrap up somehow the first phase of the series of the talks of the Altering, Shifting, Communing series with you, with your work. First of all, again, thank you for being up so late. You are in Taipei right now, so it's 12:30 a.m. So I really appreciate your patience and your devotion somehow. So I'm very happy that, as I said, we've wrapped up this first series of talks with you and your work, because as a curator, you have worked in different institutional capacities. We have included, of course, in your biography, the fact that you were the director of the Taipei Contemporary Art Center, and you're also the curator of this very interesting project titled This Is Not a Taiwan Pavilion, which was presented in 2013 at the Venice Biennale. But then you decided to go solo somehow and work as an independent curator. So for the talk, while we were preparing for this, I mentioned that I thought it would be interesting to trace this arc and, again, wrap up this conversation series with someone who has done this shift, right? This movement from the institutional to a fully independent practice, because it seems it is a transition that many are undertaking or have been undertaking due to the critical perspectives, and our reflection, or our ever-evolving, I would say, reflection on the possibilities of the institution of curatorial work. So when I talk with colleagues, I hear more and more this shift toward the independence somehow, and what does that mean, and what are the possibilities of that? So we've been talking and thinking about different aspects of curatorial work in the past 2 months, but we haven't really addressed this element, which I think it's very urgent and present in a lot of, again, of the people who are watching and listening. So thank you for this, and thank you for being open to this type of conversation as well, which might be not always the easiest. I always get started with the same question, which is, how are you? Where are you? And how have these past few months been? So feel free to introduce yourself in your own words and tell us anything you would like in response to this.
Yeah, thanks for your warm invitation. I'm really happy to have the opportunity of sharing, my stories, kind of, or practice here with, so many people unknown somewhere. And I guess this is a really critical sharing time for all of us. And, particularly because this year, everybody has been through really different form of difficulties, and in a personal level or in a larger framework. So I guess the act of sharing becomes so essential now, and probably that's something we need to embrace even more as a curator in our practice. And so I've been doing fine solo, as you mentioned. in Taipei, and I've been practice as an independent curator for quite a long while, I have to say, from the very beginning, since early 2000 till now. But of course, I had different sort of career sort of curves here and there, and have been working with different institutions. And now this few past months, as an independent curator, it's a kind of shaky state in a way, and also it has a lot to do with the fact that I am mostly working with international projects, even I'm based here in Taipei, and that says, most of the events will have to be postponed to a new deadline, which we don't know yet.
Yes.
And so in the past few months, it's a series of this rolling uncertainties, and you also feel, wow, there are different sort of anxiety that's coming out, like when you see the cultural horizon, like and put it in a future perspective, you feel like really anxious, like where is everyone going to be, and how are we going to continue? And so it feels really shaky in many ways, and especially as an independent curator, you will see, like, okay, all the hot money will be gone. Like, of course, there are more serious economic recession everywhere globally, and so where do you stand, like as a producer, as a curator, as an artist nowadays? So I guess in the past few months, it's been a challenge, but also inverted time to sort of reflect, where am I again? Like, and I think I really embrace all the struggles and difficulties all along with my life, because I think all the failures or all the struggles are where you start learning. And I guess this is also a period of a very informing time. Like, you really would see what works, what doesn't work. And so I'm making this answer really long.
No, I think it's great, and I want to thank you, because I think that being straightforward in front of a bunch of strangers about the fact that this has been a very anxiety-generating moment, even if we all share this, but just the ability to articulate, the honesty to articulate that, I think it's very it's precious. So thank you for that. And I agree that it's definitely a moment in which we all have to ask ourselves, what is it that is urgent? What is it that is going to stick? And what is it that it's going to be washed away? So it's been a very dramatic kind of few months, but at the same time, I think that in terms of the work and the thinking and the practice, it is a moment to, like, it's a call back to the essentials rather than just, the fluff somehow. Now, just to get to know your practice a little bit better, for those who might not know you yet, I wanted to start, again, as we mentioned, from the work you developed at Taipei Contemporary Art Center, and also to talk about the characteristics of this work, because it is an art space, but it's not also a traditional institution. Let's put it that way for now. I leave this to you, because it is also an independent space. So I wanted to ask you whether you could tell us a little bit about the work that you did there, and also how this type of work sits or sat in the context of the art scene in Taipei. So I'm sure that some of those who are watching might not be familiar with the Taiwanese art scene. myself, like I am the first to say that I'm not deeply and extensively familiar with it. So it is also a wonderful opportunity for us to learn from you, to learn from what you've been doing, but also how this work has related to an overall, like a broader horizon within Taipei and Taiwan in general.
Yeah, cool. I think I will answer in two parts. First of all, I would like to introduce Taipei Contemporary Art Center a bit, and then I will move to how I work in this space. And Taipei Contemporary Art Center, TCAC, was an independent project initiated during the 2008 Taipei Biennale by artist Jun Yang and the curator Man Rui Xu. And at that time, it started as a proposal from an artist. Like, do we need an art center in Taipei? So, which is an independent kind of space that embracing criticality and sort of providing different critical zone for people to discuss and public affairs around cultural policy in the city. And so if we look at the landscape of all the institutions here in Taiwan, we have the most prestigious museum, Taipei Fine Art Museum, and then we have MoCA, Museum of Contemporary Art, and then we have a bunch of commercial galleries. We also have a few different independent art space. I think the so-called alternative art space movement started from around early 90s. So that's pretty late in comparison to the European context. But the reason why it developed so late, it was also it has a very local kind of historical and political background, because our martial law lived in 87. And after that, you have more freedom of speech and all these things. And that's why, like, most of the art space or like more kind of avant-garde art thing happens around that time heavily. So art space also like start to grow into the space like that. So at the time of 2008 in Taipei, I think it has been quite a kind of revival time for contemporary art. Like, there are many practitioners, there are many artists, there are many there start to be curators, like independent curator working in the scene as well. And so I think having a space and a so-called like independent art center, which is not just an artist-run space, which is not another commercial gallery, that has a really different institution ambitions and idea, becomes a rising question or a collective curiosity. Can we do that? Can we have that? And so it was really interesting to have this background started as an artist's idea. Can we have an art center as a proposal in our biennial here locally? And then a year later, after that project, the curator and the artist and a lot more people joined in this discussion, and things started getting off. And in 2010, like a bunch of people, like local artists, critic, curator, just get together and initiate a space. And so that was like the beginning of TCAC in a way. And my engagement with the space started pretty late in 2015. I was invited by the formal board to give a try to become the first director of TCAC. Before me, it was run by the board. There was no director, no artistic director of this institution. And so the programming was more open. but also, well, because there are like many history around this little tiny institution, we have moved 3 times. I moved the 3rd time because there are different urban gentrification process going on, and so when I took it over, it was a really big challenge for me to, having to sort of rebuild a space, but also have to rebuild a program, and also because it has been carrying on so many people's imagination. What it should be and what it is. And so for me, as an independent curator for so many years, I've built institutional practice, especially this type of institutional practice is very attracting to me. Like, I would consider it as a great opportunity to, really shape it up and do something, because it's a stage, and it's full of different potential and possibility. And when I was appointed, I was really happy for having this opportunity. So I studied more thematic programming, and but at the same time still trying to respond the idea how to manage a space being public. And I think I have a metaphor for saying that I wish TCAC is an instrument. Everybody comes, play it, it will be different music. And so I try to let an institution become a tool. And I think for me that was very essential concern as the director of this tiny little institution, but also do it in a curatorial way to make it happen, because it should be nurturing not only to me but also other younger generation of artists and curators, so they will have a chance for their practice in the space, even though it's kind of tiny. Well, I can show you some image. Would you?
Yes, please. And in the meantime, I just was showing the link for those who might not know about the Taipei Contemporary Art Center, so that people can go and have a look afterwards. But yes, please do show us some images or anything you would like, for sure.
I will. Let's just see how it goes.
And in the meantime, I will say that we've been trying to really address this question also of the institution that is deinstitutionalizing itself. So I think that the metaphor of the instrument that you just brought forward is a very interesting lens through which to think about this. Like, where do others come in versus the vision of the leadership, this top-down approach? Where is the reverse, the grassroots approach? Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, here we go. So this is our 3rd space, and this is where I worked. And this is actually the opening of the first show in the space, and I've built a transparent revolving door on the street level. And so so this is like, and we have a little library, and we do all kind of events, performance and talk, and mainly talk, lots of talk, screening, and we have a little kitchen. So we also have some like a food project going on with artists. Like this is artists from Philippines, and we have a screening kind of video launch. We have our video collection in collaboration with Honga Art Museum, a private art museum here, for our video kind of archive. So, this is our space. And let me try to.
Should I remove it? There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
We see this infinite image reproducing
Yeah.
itself. Thank
So
you.
no problem. Yeah, so that's the space. So and so it's pretty open for all kinds of events. And it's an office. It's a production house. It's everything. We also collaborate with different international art space for residency. Even though we don't have a residency space here, but we invite artists for commission work and we also welcome all kind of open events, and if people having any proposal, any idea, like TCAC is the place. So it becomes it has always been, like since the beginning, a very open hangout place. And yeah, I guess this is something that we do a lot or are known for. And also during our directorship, I think I start focusing on developing more workshops model here in the space. And the reason why I did that, I think there are several layers of reason. I think probably one of the early beginning or initial point was we have been doing curatorial school in TCAC since the very beginning. So it's kind of this, co-learning and educational program, and from the very beginning. And when I start taking over and start developing it, in the very beginning, I did the traditional way. Okay, let's invite curator from everywhere and give lecture and share experience and and inspire young curators to see where they can go and what they can do, and we have sort of workshop mentoring thing. And but then I as time passed by, I think I know the space better, and I also know how to work with artists better in a way, because that TCAC sort of enabled me with that possibility to develop a long-term conversation and relationship with artists, which is probably not, well, you can of course develop that as an independent curator, but it's a different stage, let's put it that way. So yeah, then I start experimenting with the space and also because there's a restriction of the resource and everything that comes together. So you have to be really creative and to see what you can produce as an art institution. You are not a big gallery. You are not like a big, museum. And what can you do? And what can you also provide a space for artists to experiment things that they don't do otherwise. They don't do this in the museum. They don't do this when they are having show in the gallery. So you have to kind of see where you are and providing different opportunity to mediate and create a different culture for the art scene and also for the institution. Yes. So I think there are different reasons why I start become more like a mediator in a way to bridge that missing point. And during that process, I think I also just learned so much from different artists.
Thank you. I think this is great. It touches on so many different things that we've been trying to address in the past few weeks. I really love this idea of the fact that the institution fosters moments that are about freedom and togetherness at the same time, so that it really manages to kind of elude traditional formats. And that was the next question that I had for you, because I wanted to ask you about, like, you're talking about the institution as being responsive to the needs rather than just deciding, on your own what you think would be necessary. And I think this is super important. And on the other end, also this idea of eluding traditional formats. So you mentioned workshops, and I always, like, I realize more and more that these types of formats are an incredible opportunity and strategy to escape the fixity or immobility somehow of the exhibition format of traditional institutions, and to really transition toward this communal production of knowledge or experiences that you were talking about, no new forms of knowledge or immaterial forms of knowledge that might not be condensed in the artwork per se. So, and also the fact that some of these experiences might not necessarily have a productive purpose. Like, we're not here to be productive in a neoliberal way, right? We might be here just to process or explore together. So what I wanted to ask you is whether you can tell us more about this. And also, I know that while we were preparing for this talk, you mentioned a particular workshop that was held at TCAC in 2017 called Body Work, which you mentioned because I guess it has a specific relevance. So I wanted to ask you also if you could talk to us about this project and the significance it had on your subsequent practice. And also, while doing this, as you were doing before, if you could continue to share with us what your thoughts or strategies are to defy this normativity of the institution somehow.
I think by doing workshop, one thing I gradually noticed is that it is a process of recognizing biopolitics, and it's a reconciliation with your body as well, and body as a side, as a memory, as a driven part. It becomes more and more obvious, like in this process. And so in the third year of me running TCAC, I start putting the entire program focusing on body politics. Mm-hmm. And one of the artists that I invited was Taylor Cuban from New York. And he proposed having this exercise session. And it was really fun. Like And the reason why I shared this particular project was because we have a sort of collective outcome, a video that I can share briefly later. And so we started with different reading and chatting and exploring, and then we come up with 1 hour exercise that you can watch online and do it at home during this lockdown period. And to explore different way of feeling your body in a way. So it's a series of almost political incorrect or particularly strange session to work your body. And I would love to share it. It will be fun to just look for a few minutes. Let's screen share this.
Here we go.
Okay, cool. So this is the street outside TCAC actually, and
exercise with our body and purpose.
So the first one is to move your body without purpose. Wow, and the exercise has its specific sort of time rhythm, ranging from Monday to Sunday. You be animals that you like and blah blah blah. Okay, I'm going to skip this one very soon.
Yes. And this was done with general visitors. Who was the group that you gathered for this?
It was sort of invitation, also open call. So I do have like artists here, and I also have like people that I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, and
It's
this is
amazing.
our space, and it becomes this Jean place. Because the artist was really fed up by the fact that, not everybody is trying to have the perfect shape. And what if we don't have that? And so that was the beginning. And I want to show you something interesting. I don't know where.
Okay, I see you right there with the pink shirt.
Yeah.
Very nice outfit.
Okay, I don't know where it is. I'm trying to. Oh, okay, this one. This is a new Tai Chi developed by Xia. So we are trying to imitate and have a new balance with all the electronic products around us.
Okay.
So we were imitating their shape, trying to be them, feel their energy. And this is selfie stick.
Okay. So this was a process of 1 hour overall that was the outcome of this series of projects and meetings you did with Tyler in the space.
Yeah. We had 2 weeks to develop this.
Okay.
Yeah. I think over 6 sessions. And the 6th session is already a public exercise, so we are leading other audience to do that, and we are also making a video. So it was very productive, and I was very, very much inspired by this process, I have to say. I'm going back to me, I guess. How do I do it?
You can just stop share screen, but otherwise, there we go. It works well.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so we used like 6 sessions to complete the production, and everyone wrote a particular exercise, and it became like a 1 hour thing. And after that production, I was thinking, oh, this is super fun. Like, we can really put up serious production, and it has full potential to become an artwork already.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I was interested in my role in terms of how do I develop different collaborative strategy working with artists, and workshop become one of the things that I start grabbing more. And so after that I also focusing more on speculative writing. And of course there are also many reasons, many stories why like different artists give me different inspiration or different cues to develop different ideas, and it just start rolling, and it becomes a pack of tools that I have with me in my body in a way that I feel, wow, so I can just, whenever I am invited to some places, I can just pull out, I can just roll out like all the things, and I can do a workshop. I can communicate, I can produce on site. And that becomes a really kind of interesting discovery for myself, even like, okay, so this is a kind of curatorial methodology that I am trying to develop for myself.
And I'll ask you more about this because we are always very interested in this question of the tools. So as we were talking while preparing for for the event. We're talking about the things that we discovered, the things that we hold on to, what we know, translate for each single project, what we carry with us. And what I wanted to ask you is, somehow you took us on the verge of the end of your time at TCAC, and so I wanted to focus for a moment on the moment of transition. So in 2017 or after 2017, you transitioned out of the institution, despite the fact that it's an independent institution, artist founded, so it has a very specific and very interesting format. But I wanted to also ask how and why you decided to do so. Sort of for a moment, if you can accompany us with you in this movement that you did kind of out of the institution.
I think by the third year of running the institution, I also have reached a bit my limit in terms of how I can keep it always to the public while also trying to be more of myself.
Mm-hmm.
There is this little conflict, like inside my mind, and also, yeah, I feel the learning pattern of myself has reached a limit. Mm-hmm. Because it's like a tiny institution, and it could easily become a routine. Of course, it's an institution built for imagination, built for creativity. But I feel we were, yeah, I feel I need more space to learn and space to grow. And that was the main reason I sort of decided I need to move on.
That's great. And then what I wanted to ask you next is, in fact, how has your work transformed ever since? So since this movement out, because again, while we were talking and preparing for this talk, I know that you are like, a few things emerged. I know that you are concerned with questions of how independent curators engage with spaces, independent spaces, but also what kind of attitude a freelancer can have toward the institutional world. This is a negotiation, no? It's a relationship that is constantly renegotiating itself, and it's filled with conflict sometimes, but filled with also critical thinking and political choices of different nature. And also you mentioned at some point how through one's work as an independent curator, one can move things forward. Let's use forward, but just generally advance or expand or change, I assume, experiment perhaps. So
I don't know which way is forward.
exactly. Maybe always in like rhizomatic way. But so then thinking about this transition, this transformation of your work, this amplification of the space, and also these concerns that you were articulating, no, of the relationship of the independent practitioner toward the institution, toward herself. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are now that you are, of course, a few years into being back in the independent space, no? So how has your thinking and your practice changed in light of all of this?
I think my practice hasn't been changed too much in terms of how I approach people, how I approach things, or my attitude toward art. So I think in that regard, I'm quite consistent with what I love to do, and just like a different sort of position and framework and a different way of getting resources. But at the same time, it's also very similar because when I was the director at TCAC, I had to do fundraising. And so, yeah, doing fundraising for a private independent art space and doing fundraising for myself is exactly the same thing. It's not very different. I mean, you are writing proposal, you are asking for help. So, yeah.
And then
Where were I?
no, you were just
Yeah.
talking about this shift, but the fact that the positionality changes, but not other things.
Exactly. Yeah, not other things. And so I sort of took the advantage of being, really free from any fixed sort of obligation. I had the opportunity to get different research grants to go, traveling, meeting new people, and having residencies in Paris, like where I met you again. And so that was very like nurturing process for me actually. And I also developed more consolidated methodology for working in for working in this workshop format. I can give you some different, I don't know, details of like if you are interested. Like,
yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you about this because the next point that I had marked for in terms of question was really this element of the speculative. You mentioned that you began to progressively focus on collective and workshops about the speculative, and you mentioned before that you have through time been consolidating this pack of tools. So I wanted to ask you about your strategies and also what kind of freedom has this type of practice given, to you, but also to the artist and the publics involved. Yeah. And then because you mentioned speculative, I also wanted to kind of poke that term a little bit because by asking you at least how you define speculative and how you define its potential. And I'm asking this because often the term speculative is associated, of course, with writing in an almost exclusive relationship, which, of course, is a very interesting relationship, but it's not the only one. So there are other types as well. And we were talking briefly before also, for instance, about the body, this bodily speculative relationship. So, and I'm asking this also to somehow bring to the fore the potential for speculation, the fact that it can be a form of activism, it can be, of course, political imagination, but it can also be social agency or even affective exploration. And while talking with you, you touched upon all of these, you touched on all of these things. So many things can be achieved and experimented. So I wanted to ask you about all of this and how you're navigating somehow this spectrum of possibilities. And feel free, yes, to share any example or specific projects. It is an open-ended question because it's a very open-ended field, that of speculative workshop. So
yeah, it is. And I think the aims of doing this kind of workshop is also very open. It could be speculative in all sort of way, and that could be really blurred, but I also managed to bring a focus in different part. Like I have been doing different length of workshop, like the shortest could be like 3 hours perhaps, and the longest is probably 10 days so far. And like I can give you the shortest while I develop my scores for workshop. And during the workshop I always sort of juggling around with the sequence, the tours, like what I do. But sometimes I also have very specific scores or that I would go through, like for example in the 3 hours one. Well, the 3 hour one I did was a really interesting one. It happened in Hangzhou, the Academy of Art in China. And it was a 3 hour session. And that day was a very politically sensitive day. It's 4th of June. And it happened in the Art Academy, like the most prestigious art academy in China. And I was okay, this is a really particular sort of occasion. as the 50 years of Tiananmen Square movement anniversary. And so I designed the workshop with my own political intention to help people imagine today in 50 years later. And so it was a really interesting point that how I build up the sequence without saying any political thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just inviting participants to imagine 15 years from today, and there was different sequence of different games and playing, and I actually took lots of reference from surrealist game.
Mm-hmm.
In my workshop. And when I was in Paris, I was really happy in the library going through many historical documents to see how people played in the last century. And so I used lots of technique from them, actually, like exclusive chords and different sort of game, different artist game. I just borrow many artists' game to be in this condition, helping people jumping from one idea to the next idea, this sentence to the next sentence, and to create a figure, to create a scenario, and then in the meantime also have some body exercise, different body exercise, and then trying to inspire in a very sensual way. Using different tools, and by the and sometimes I mix material from everyday life, like newspaper, and because there are lots of words and lots of story, lots of crazy story. Well, reality is the most crazy place, right? So just mix all the material into the workshop, and then by the end, it was amazing writing coming up from the 3 hours thing. They were, crazy, exclusive chords, sort of that scenario,
Mm-hmm.
but also I asked them to write a story for a persona that they created from this, and in a 50 years time. And many things were full of love, full of different political idea or social critique, and I will give some sort of hints. Like I would say, you are welcome to write in any form, and you can write a will, you can write a love letter, you can write a recipe, you can write a poem, you can write a dialogue. I mean, it's like many ways of writing, and you are free to do that. So so we create a huge scenario for this 50 years later day, and by the end of the workshop. And that was for me very beautiful process, and I think people also find it unexpected. Like they didn't know they can write in 3 hours. But I was designing every movement in a very precise way, so things can move really fast. So it's like building a machine of having people in almost like a playground, but you don't see the the infrastructure or anything. It's just air. Yeah. And so it's like putting already a very theatrical kind of setting also, because people are moving there, and it's also a production side. So it's like everything I learned as a curator, how to work with artists, I can move to work with different audience and or different particular group for different aims. And that's something that I I really enjoy this day.
That's wonderful. And in fact, like what I wanted to ask you, but I think you've already answered this, was somehow this question of how you set the relationships in these groups, because what you do is bringing together oftentimes strangers or people who do not know each other, and guiding them or walking with them through a process that can have also very intimate aspects, no? So, or in any case, that requires a lot of labor on different levels, maybe emotional or intellectual or bodily, as you were saying. And I think it's very interesting to hear you talk about how you're setting the scenario for these relationships to happen or to evolve.
Yeah.
And I know
I can show you a bit more photos. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
For
please.
the workshop. Okay.
And then I will also ask you about, as I was mentioning before, the project that you're working on right now, which is titled The Post-Super Future Asia. So just very briefly, maybe after we see pictures, if you can give us like 1 minute on that, because I think it's interesting to know what it is that you're working on right now.
Okay. This is Elena from Venice, and we're at CAC. I was doing my first Lemon series workshop, and the first game we played was something I called glass cinema. I put different objects in glass and later fill the water, so some things will probably sink, something will probably float, and something might change color. I don't know, like various different chemistry will happen. And that's like a mediation for people to imagine the persona they're going to enter to. Like, for instance, this is something that I do. And then somebody during this session proposed we all become solar panel. So we were all facing sun and having energy from it. And another little game that we play was having a communal kiss by linking ourselves with wires and a 9-volt battery and having a little gentle electricity shock.
Okay.
And this is like, for example, I asked people to put out their phone and choose an image with a direction, with a hint. And then we have a really quick, like 1 minute exhibition as a sort of sequence to go to the other thing. And this is in Taipei at TCAC. And we were doing this exercise where you see ikebana flower arrangement as an exercise. So we were using different verb as an action to do and take turn to do the flower arrangement. And then also after the flower arrangement, each of us generate a new adjective term to describe it. So, and that will lead to another layer of writing. So you see, like I was sort of weaving with material and then text and then material and text or different experience, and to help people sort of coming up. And this is a food session. I guess, there are like a different fun image there.
Thank you so much. I think it's very interesting. Like I was taking notes like crazy because I'm very interested in this notion of alternative forms of creating relationships, right? Relationship between different things or connecting meaning otherwise, other forms of imagining relations, human, non-human, and ultimately like other ways of forging alternative epistemologies, no? How we use language, what do we use it for? What do we connect it to? I think it's a very powerful, like it's such an effort of the imagination, but of everything that we know, like we invest everything that we know in the process. that I was very fascinated by it as you were explaining it to us somehow. And I was also wondering a little bit about not necessarily the reactions, but really, again, the processes that you saw people going through somehow. So maybe, yes, we can call them the reactions, but really like how you saw people perhaps struggling or just opening up, this door of imaginative speculation, or struggling to establish other types of relationships. I don't know. I was just curious about this particular element, because you are somewhat the connector, as you were saying before. You are the moderator. You are the person responsible for what happens in the room somehow.
Yeah. I guess I'm quite lucky. Most of the response were quite positive. And probably that also keeps me going, because I just keep getting lots of nice feedback to say, wow, this is something like you should do, like you should keep doing. This is very new and fresh, and especially I think artists, they really love it. And I've been working also with performing artists with my workshop methodology, and that has been super great. I mean, that was like huge generator for them to develop different sort of body language, different ideas and stuff. And so I start recognizing the value of this type of work, and how artists really embrace this process. But I also understand I also need to turn it into other things, because it's so ephemeral and so intangible. And so I don't know. This is my recent task, and I really should think if I should return this to a spatial practice, or I don't know, it should be an app, or it should be a full educational program that I can approach school, I can approach museum, I can approach, I don't know, different entity for collaboration.
That's very interesting, and it's super connected actually to the other question that I had, which is the fact that this project somehow has a nomadic component to it. And a lot of it, it's intangible. Of course, it's documented through videos and photos, but it's really about the process. And I wanted to connect this to something else that you mentioned while we were preparing for the talk that struck me, because I resonate with it very strongly, which is the issue or question of resources. So you at some point said, while we were talking in the past weeks, that you are very concerned and very, very interested also in this question of the resources. So I wanted to ask you how you are thinking about this aspect somehow, and how you are working with it now, especially through this type of, at least for now, let's say, nomadic practice. So how is the relationship between these two dimensions for you in the work?
I think at the moment I'm still pretty much depending on funding system. And and I think we are quite lucky in Taiwan in a sense that, but it's also very strange, like it's a capitalist society, but somehow our government, because they really need to invest on culture, because this is the easy thing for them to export without political kind of restraints. So we do have a relatively rich support from the government to help curator to do things, develop project. Of course, it's not sustainable, but it's the basis. And as I mentioned, I'm thinking I should probably develop it into another form so it can sustain better. And I'm thinking about that because my formal experience at TCAC have also taught me how important it is to be able to create an economic model
Mm-hmm.
for your work. And I think that's seriously critical and important for independent curator. And especially if I am not considering building my career based on, in sort of, institutional kind of position, then, how to create or use the nature of my work to create alternative art economy will be really essential. And when I'm saying art economy, I am addressing not only financially how I connect to resources, but how all the other immaterial resources, all the commons are coming into the flow, and how I can connect with art ecology in a different perspective. And I think this is something that I'm still trying to find a way to navigate a possibility to approach that. But luckily I am sort of having different invitation and opportunity, or I just turn every invitation into this workshop thing. So I'm still working on that, and I'm still experimenting different new ideas and approach. And like when you were asking, this latest project, a post-super future Asia writing workshop, it's actually a long-term project, a collaboration with Jason Wee, an artist curator from Singapore. And it's a speculative writing workshop. And we're going to have our 5th version online in September. We used to run like physical meeting in different cities around Asia mainly. But due to this COVID-19 outbreak, we have to really keep it online this time. And we decided that, in September, we're gonna run the 5th workshop. And I'm going to develop different strategy to approach that, because it's online. Like all the things that I just showed you will be impossible then. So, I have to, again, but it's like, of course you live day by day, every day there's new challenge, and you have to see what you can do with that. And
Thank you. I think it's a great point, and it's something very important. This question of sustainability, like trying to find new forms of sustainability to try to break the economic mold as we know it now for the practices that we engage with, and trying to understand and imagine new ways of working through networks of economic sustainability. I see that we're running out of time, so I encourage whoever's watching to start writing down questions for Esther. I will take maybe a couple if we have time. So really, I encourage everyone to just ask. Do not be shy, and I'll be happy to pass them on and field them to Esther. And in the meantime, Esther, I want to ask you the last question that I had, which is somewhat another recurrent question throughout the series of talks. Something that we try to cultivate a lot is this amplification of the work of others. I say this all the time, and you've done a marvelous job in the sense that already throughout the other questions you've been mentioning other collaborators and artists and institutions that are somehow of interest, and that might be interesting for those who are watching and listening to this talk. But I just wanted to ask you more specifically, again, drawing back to the initial question about Taipei or Taiwan in general, whether there are other institutions or collaborators or projects that you think are particularly interesting and that might be somewhat, for one reason or another, in line also with the methodology that you're trying to pursue through your independent practice, just so that, again, whoever watches will be able to leave this event also with a couple a couple additional seeds, let's put it that way, for things to research or to read or to look at that might be interesting and aligned with everything that we've been discussing in the last hour.
Yeah. I think I will recommend 2 spaces, and because I really respect what they do, mainly, not because we have similar practice, we have quite different practice, but I think they are very respectable place that if you have a chance to come to Taipei, please definitely visit them. One of them is called the Cube Project Space. It's a project space by Amy Chen, an independent curator. And
I will show their page. You were kind enough to here, so I'll just show their homepage in the meantime. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been focusing their work with song art in relation, or idea of song in relation to local history. And so that's quite a niche, and they also have their archive, and they now have their sort of podcasting, not podcasting, they have their sort of podcast radio program that you can follow. And another space is called Lightbox Photo Library. So they started as a really photo book library, but then they started to initiate and organize more talks about visual culture. And it's a lovely space in the city that welcome to visit.
Thank you so much for this. I see that there are some comments coming in. Let's have a look together. There we go. This is the first question that comes in. They're asking if there's any way they can look up and reach your writing workshop since it is online this year.
Okay, I think we haven't announced the open call yet, so I don't have the link yet for it. But this year we are collaborating with the host, which is Singapore Art House, and you can look their website for the update news. I think we will start the open call in August, and so
wonderful.
More information there.
Wonderful. I'm just going to briefly show, I think it's helpful for people to see if I can find it. Oh no, it's not letting me share the screen. But again, it's the Arts House in Singapore, so that people can definitely subscribe and have a look. Okay, then we have another question that says, Esther, you mentioned the Taiwanese government is supportive of your work and through generous funding. To what extent is contemporary art and so on a deliberate political strategy for soft power?
Well,
I know.
This is a critical question. I also have lots of personal opinion on that because I feel it's very easy for art to be instrumentalized for political purpose. And I think with such funding scheme, it's very obvious, like people are really working toward this nation building thing. And I think I also reflect my criticality for that in my Venice process, which is called, this is not a Taiwan Pavilion, but there are many, many layers of political criticality behind that. Nevertheless, this is one of the things, and it's problematic.
Well, thank you so much for this. I see very nice comments, which I will share later, not specific questions, so I'll just pass them on. Esther, I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and, of course, with your knowledge, for telling us all about these amazing workshops. I'm just going to share again the link to the Art House in Singapore that you just mentioned for those who are interested in joining the open call for the upcoming writing workshop series. So people can visit this and subscribe to the newsletter, right? To hopefully have the chance to join these amazing programs that you've been running. And so thank you so very much again for your time and for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And it's been a real pleasure. And I also want to thank everyone who has joined for this conversation. As I mentioned at the beginning, the Altering, Shifting, Communing series will take a recess throughout the month of August, but we will be back in September with new guests and with a refreshed format. So for whoever wants to stay up to date, I'm going to share once again the link. Here you can look at the calendar and also subscribe to the newsletter of the series to stay up to date. And last but not least, again, sharing our email. If you want to share any feedback, suggestion, or ideas, or if you have a specific follow-up question for Esther, we'd be very happy to work as a bridge and help facilitate the conversation afterwards. So thank you very much again, everybody, and until soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.